Okay, hello and welcome to yet another NCAA first round preview. Today we're looking at the game between the 6th seed Virginia Cavaliers and the unseeded St. Joe's Mountain Hawks. I've been watching a lot of film this week, obviously, to try to get ready for these previews. Watch some more St. Joe's than I have all season, and this is going to be an awesome game. A lot of great athletes on these two teams. A lot of similar styles and similar ways that they want to play the game, and a lot of nasty competitors on these two teams. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be rough as shit, and I think whoever's better able to, A, control the physicality of the game, and B, control the emotions that come with that physicality, is going to win. St. Joe's had an absolute slugfest against Richmond in the championship game, and they just kept taking shots. Physical, just kept hitting Richmond. They made a bunch of plays on the ride, super fun game. And then obviously no one needs to explain how UVA has been doing that to the rest of the country for several years now. The biggest story in this game and the most important thing is you have arguably the hottest team in the country versus one of the teams in the tournament who's on a bit of a cold streak. St. Joe's hasn't lost since February 23rd. They lost to BU, who was one goal away from being a tournament team. Duke, obviously, a very good team. And then Towson, who would become a tournament team. So those losses didn't feel great probably at the time. Looking back at it, a decent resume. They get going against Air Force, and then they just get on a run. And they haven't lost again since February 23rd. They've won 10 in a row, and that includes 2 wins over a pretty good Richmond team in the matter of a week, which, as anyone knows, is pretty tough. And they've been smoking teams. They finally got their win against Air Force to get going, 15-6 against Drexel, 15-8 against St. John's, 12-7, a big win over Penn, who was, again, one step away from being a tournament team, 13-12 over Providence. That was the close one. And then 15-7, 12-7, 12-7, 24-3, and then a few close games in the conference tournament. So they've been on a roll. On the flip side, Virginia's lost 4 straight. Now, those 4 straight are against really good teams. They lost to Duke, the 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, and kind of a weird game. They always lose to Duke. It's really weird. They lost to Syracuse in a game they probably wanted back in a shootout on the road. Both those games are on the road. Then they fought real hard, played a tight one against Notre Dame, and then ended up getting kind of run out of the building a little bit in the ACC tournament by Notre Dame. So 4 straight losses to the 2 seed, the 4 seed, and twice to the 1 seed of the NCAA tournament. So very high caliber teams they're playing against, but still it's unusual for a 6 seed to be coming in with 4 straight losses. What that means is the start of this game is going to be big. If St. Joe's can kind of carry their momentum that they've been carrying for a while here, look out. They clearly are a team that plays with emotion, and their schemes match that emotion, which is exciting for them. For Virginia, you got to look to get your swag back early. They will not be the first team to shake off a bad late season and then go on a playoff run. It's happened before. Their messaging all week in Charlottesville will be that it's a new season, and it is. So just want to go over some kind of things to watch in this game. The first, it's going to be a war at the face-off X. St. Joe's does a great job of mucking up their face-off. They play 2 poles. Virginia's done that before. Virginia will probably play only 1 with Ben Ware. He's an absolute stud. Levi Virch is a player you need to be aware of on St. Joe's if you haven't already. He makes plays. He had 5 or 6 loose balls in the conference tournament finals. On the season, he's got 76 loose balls and 28 caused turnovers. Those are elite numbers. He's a Canadian from Victoria. He played for Team Canada at the under-21 very recently. The kid is a machine. Those 3v3 face-off battles are going to be a war. On that note, St. Joe's face-off man Gavin Tighes had a nice year. Tighes got a pretty cool story. I was lucky to play with him at University of Maryland. He actually went to Virginia, so gets a little bit of chance for revenge here, then transferred to Maryland, and now is finishing his career at St. Joe's. So he's now won conference championships with 3 different schools, and then also has 2 national championships at different programs. So he's been in a lot of great programs at this point, and happy for him to see him having a great final year for St. Joe's. But a guy who has been around the tournament environment will be an asset for St. Joe's. Although they've made the tournament before, it's never bad to have more experience. And then on that note, the big story is who's going to win the 10-man battle. Virginia pretty much reinvented the 10-man a few years ago. They are the 14th best riding team in the country by opposing clear. Well, St. Joe's is the second best. Opponents are clearing just 75%. They were dominant with it against Richmond. I'll throw a bunch of film clips in here, but the key to the St. Joe's ride, as was the key to the UVA ride when it's successful, is the hustle of their attackmen. I think there's lots of X's and O's you can break down with a 10-man. The most important thing is you have to have attackmen willing to chase the ball and to stop the ball at the midline and turn it back. St. Joe's does an outstanding job of that. They got a bunch of really tough attackmen, bunch of Canadians up there, and they do a phenomenal job. Okay, a lot of the focus on 10-man rides is about what happens upfield. Watch the hustle from behind here by Ecclestone. Gets himself back into play. Great chop. Page picks up the ride, attacks the ball. Length on the back end makes it really difficult. Ball's still on the ground. St. Joe's makes the play. Extra possession for the Hawks. And then similarly on this one, Levi Anderson, the leading scorer on the team, one of the best players in the country and the conference. Not a great camera angle of it here, but you can see just breaks down and then just hellaciously attacks his defender, forces the ball to turn back. This pushes Richmond into a far pass. They don't end up completing. Another extra possession from the 10-man ride for the Hawks caused by the hustle of the attackman. Virginia, obviously well-schooled in the 10-man. They're one of the best clearing teams in the country, third best. If they can clear it cleanly, that's going to be big, because St. Joe's really relies on those turnovers and the juice that they get from them in order to be successful. Looking at the numbers from a macro point of view, St. Joe's, the 14th most efficient team in the country, 18th offensively, 26th defensively, the 19th scoring offense, 10th scoring defense. So, again, they've been good on the faceoffs, and they rely on creating a lot of turnovers. Virginia's 22nd overall in efficiency, 16th offense, 39th defense. As always, those are courtesy of Lacrosse Reference. And then the 9th scoring offense and the 41st defense. What that suggests is a pretty good pace up and down. They're going to take shots, they're going to get up and down, typical to how Virginia teams always want to play, and obviously they're damn good at it. Okay, starting with the keys to the game for Virginia. The first question is who guards Levi Anderson? He's a stud, just got drafted to the PLL for the second time, and a very high draft pick in the NLL as well. You kind of got to eliminate your stereotypes of Canadians when it comes to him. He's got many of the best parts about Canadians, but he's significantly more athletic. He's great at shooting on the run, and he's going to challenge matchups more than most Canadians will. He's an attackman who plays almost like a midfielder, and while he's not two-handed, he's very good at shooting underneath, so shooting twisters, shooting shots with his hands between his shoulder blades, or even his hands on the other side as normal of his shoulder blades. So it basically works like a right hand. So he's a tough guy to approach. You don't want to let him sweep. That really opens up a lot in their offense, but you also have to be ready to support. The natural matchup you would think would be Cole Kastner, a fellow PLL pick this year. Kastner's huge. He's 6'7", super long. I think the story to watch with that is Levi Anderson is a player who gets right into you. He likes to get in between the hands of the defenders when they try to cross-check him. That allows him to dictate. He's great in contact. He wants contact, seeks contact, and Kastner is unbelievable at using his length to kind of keep his stick on guys, keep them at stick's length, keep his gap. That's going to be a challenge against Anderson. They have John Schroeder if they want, who can really bang, and I think might be a better fit on Anderson. Curious to see what the matchup is there. Problem is Schroeder's a lefty. Lefty on lefty is going to be tough, especially with the emphasis on keeping Anderson down the alley. Again, Kastner is an incredible player, multi-time All-American, multi-time national championship. Not taking anything away from there, but just a guy who's so good at using his length. Some of that might be mitigated against Anderson, who is really good at getting into the getting into the body of the defender. On that note, I'm curious to see how UVA plays this early in possessions. Early in the year, they were really pressing out against Notre Dame. They looked a little bit maybe shell-shocked or kind of letting Notre Dame come to them. I expect them to be aggressive early in the possession. And one of the reasons for that is St. Joe's is fairly methodical on offense. They want to get their guys set up, a fair amount of one-handed players, so depending on the quarter, it takes time for guys to get to their sweet spots as they want to play middle of the field, sticks to the middle most of the time. I think one of the keys to the entire game is St. Joe's ability to collapse the defense and get into their offensive sets. Virginia's really long on the outside. They're super athletic, especially Kastner and Schroeder. They can really ruin your shit on the outside of the offense. And for St. Joe's to really emphasize their strengths, which is their literal strength, and their Canadian skills inside, they got to get closer to the goal, and they got to find ways to initiate that offense before Virginia gets into it. I think if Virginia sits back and lets St. Joe's set up how they want to, I think that's a mistake, and I think they're mitigating some of their incredible advantages on the perimeter with their length. We've seen teams really struggle with that all year long. It's an impressive group of athletes on defense for Virginia and also for St. Joe's. We'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, this is at the end of a man-up play, so I don't want to read too much into this clip, but just an example of Richmond letting St. Joe's set up their offense a little bit. Again, we're waiting for all 6 guys to get on the field, but taking a little bit longer than some teams. Some teams might try to kind of slow dodge. I don't think you'll see Virginia sit back this far, especially with their poles. I think they're going to get out and try to pressure the play early. 40 seconds left, and they're finally starting the offense. If I'm Virginia, I'm getting out early and seeing if I can delay that. And then switching sides of the field for the Virginia offense, secondary scoring has been the story all year. When you look through their top 6 guys, those are their top 6 scorers. The next scorer is Joey Terenzi, phenomenal player, has played short stick and offensive midfield for them. The next one is their LSM. And then by the time you get to Will Corey, 8 points this year, so they're still looking for production from that second line. I think they've made an adjustment at times recently to put McCabe Millen in the midfield. I thought that was actually pretty effective. Curious to see if they do that again. One of the keys for them will be outside shooting in this game. And I know that kind of sounds funny, but as I'll show in some of these film clips, St. Joe's does an awesome job of really packing the paint. They have huge players, unlike Virginia, who uses their length to really dominate on the perimeter. St. Joe's uses their length to really muck up the inside. And there's times when they have 4 or 5 guys in the paint. I think Virginia needs to keep their formations big and really hit their shots when they get them. Obviously, some talented guys. I think Schutz might have more step-down opportunities in this game. And one of the challenges for the way St. Joe's wants to play defensively is obviously the gifted skip passing of Schellenberger, among others. Okay, a great look here at how St. Joe's wants to pack the paint in front of the goal. All 5 of their off-ball defenders within 5 yards of the goal. Virginia has to be ready to shoot these and to score off skip passes. Colsey's been really good recently. Peyton Cormier probably at this point officially underrated, on his path to maybe breaking the all-time goals record. Depends significantly on what happens in this game. Curious to see if they kind of leverage some lefty two-man game. Haven't seen it a whole lot from them, but looking for answers after back-to-back 9-goal performances against Notre Dame. Maybe it's an option. Again, they've been scoring a lot on everybody else. That Notre Dame team is really a step above the rest of the country right now, especially on that side of the ball. They had some good looks, especially in the ACC championship game, and Entman is pretty inevitable. He's a great player and was really good in that game, so they got to kind of keep pushing through that. But on that note, in that game, Cormier was one of the best initiators. He got his own shot. I don't think a ton of people fully understand his game. He does a whole lot more than just finish. But, he got his shot. He was getting his shots off, and I'm curious if they lean more to him as a primary option, dodging from the wing. Similar, maybe to Chris Cloutier against North Carolina, went on a huge playoff run. Late in the season, I've been saying this week, teams don't want to side as much in the playoffs. if you're not going to slide to Cormier, especially on a short stick, you're in trouble. And he's got more range, I think, than people realize. So curious to see that evolution there for Virginia. And then wanted to make one other point about Virginia. They have to win the wins. And what do I mean by that is translating one faceoffs or even one clamps into offensive possessions. The numbers weren't outstanding for St. Joe's and their faceoff unit against Richmond, but they created several turnovers off the faceoff. They won several faceoffs where they didn't win the initial clamp. This is a great one. Ty forces the faceoff guy back. They get a switch. The LSM's ready and waiting, and the attackmen hustle again from behind. This is another great look. This is a one face-off fast break for Richmond. Great hustle getting back. A ton of length. Great job off the ground by St. Joe's going the other way, and it leads to an outstanding transition opportunity for St. Joe's. And then lastly, a good clip to end this video on, a good summary of St. Joe's and how they're playing right now. A lost face-off, or at least lost clamp. Refs are going to let you play in May. Ty wins it, goes back on the ground, and then Levi Anderson, again, the best player on the team, comes up with a loose ball, and he is a load when he goes to the goal. And eerily similar to many of the Virginia highlights we've seen over the years. Okay, switching sides of the field now to St. Joe's. A lot of the same things that we've been saying about Virginia can be said for St. Joe's. That's why this is going to be such a dogfight, such a physical game. St. Joe's, they're huge defensively. Some of their starting defenders, number 51, Alex Keener, is on a bunch of the wings alongside Virch. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. Virch himself is 6'2", 217. Number 55, Liam Quinn, is 6'7", 237. 6'7", 240, one of the biggest players in the country. Actually similar to Castner. They're both 6'7", pretty rare, obviously, that you see that. And, maybe not quite as freaky of athletes as some of the Virginia kids, but it's still length, and they're very strong, and they're mean. And they play hard, they pack the paint, and this is going to be an ice bag game for Virginia, and I think it's going to be a test of will for them to continuously attack and go hard. This St. Joe's team is playing with a lot of confidence and a lot of physicality, and they're going to try to break the will. The biggest question is obviously, what do you do with Schellenberger? He's the most dynamic player they've seen in several weeks. He is a very, very difficult player to guard one-on-one, and then the skip passes obviously get really difficult. St. Joe's themselves doesn't play a lot of offense below the goal. I would expect to see a lot of offense from Virginia behind the goal. I think Virginia de-emphasized this against Notre Dame, mostly because that Sean Light on Notre Dame is really, really good and was very good in the two-man game against Schellenberger. Chips are down now in the playoffs against a team where they can probably win matchups. I would look for the dive sit a lot early for Virginia, and then, St. Joe's has to be careful of not getting too tight because, again, those skip passes can really kill you, especially to the backside with guys like Cormier who are pretty efficient shooters, obviously. On that note, they got to try to do what they can to limit the Virginia guys really getting ahead of steam. Schutz, Millen, and Schellenberger especially are really dynamic on-the-run shooters. I think to the extent that they can make those guys lefties, that's important. And then, just trying to crowd them early in their dodge and not letting them get ahead of steam. Coaches always say one move and go, and defensively try to keep the guys to one move, no rollbacks. I actually think that's less important in this game than letting the Virginia guys get big, long runs at stuff because they're really dynamic shooters, and it's asking a lot of your goaltenders, especially on sweeps and up the hash. Times when guys are running, and while they're running, advancing or increasing rather the angle of their stick. So I think it's important for St. Joe's to crowd those Dodgers and then be ready to go. I think their best offense is setting picks for Levi Anderson and letting him hopefully sweep. It really creates a lot of open looks for them. and then, kind of go from there. Page and Levi Anderson are obviously the headliners for St. Joe's. Matt Bomer's a great player as well, but 6 goals in the tournament final for Page and 7 for Anderson. So, they're going to be saying all week UVA's there for the taking. I think, the 7-8 games are probably more, pick-em style games. This one I think most lacrosse fans would have as an upset, but the St. Joe's team is capable of pulling something like that, especially guys like Anderson and Virch. Those are guys who would play at most any school in the country, and they're going to be. This is a team that has probably 4 or 5 professional lacrosse players on it when you count the Canadian guys that'll play NLL one day. I think that stuff is important, and especially in playoff time. Now, with that being said, Virginia is one of the most experienced playoff groups in the country. This group has been to the promised land multiple times. They've been to the Final Four every year. This is an outstanding team. Up until a couple weeks ago, most people talking about them as title favorites or like significant title contenders. Obviously, losing to some good teams recently has kind of dampened, I think, the national attention on them. They might have the best player in the NCAA tournament. That is important. And Cormier is fairly close when you start drafting guys. So they have outstanding players. They're very well coached, and they're playing at home. This team does not lose at Klockner Stadium very often. So lastly, I'll just kind of continue picking some X factors for this game. I'll go with Matt Bomer for St. Joe's. I think there's a pretty decent chance that Anderson gets Kastner and Carter Page gets covered by Schroeder. I think those guys are really talented, and if they're playing really well, that puts a little bit of pressure on Bomer, but he's been solid this year, 4-time captain, they said on the broadcast. That's obviously pretty impressive. And then Virginia, I think it's Colsey. He's been good recently. He's pretty slick. He's going to need to beat his man and score unassisted goals, take some of the pressure off of McCabe, Shelley, and Cormier, but obviously a super deep group. And look for these Virginia D-middies to try to make some plays in transition as well. Obviously a very good group. Again, should be a slugfest. Going to be a really fun game, and expect the rest of the 5 games this week as we continue our first round previews.